So we've got special factors. Today we're going to be talking about perfect square trinomials. And if you guys remember, we talked about perfect squares earlier. Does anybody remember what a perfect square is?
Isn't it that number times itself?
It's the answer to something times itself. So like 9 is a perfect square, 16 is a perfect square. Well, a perfect square trinomial is going to be the answer to something times itself. And we'll take a look at that here in a second. So first, we're just going to start with an example. So the first thing that I want to look at, this is going to look pretty much like our normal trinomials, right? I want you to go ahead and put your two sets of parentheses. And in order to multiply to get the x squared, we have to have an x and an x. Okay.
Then it'd be plus 5, right?
Yes. So now these two numbers have to multiply to be 25. And
Had to be 10.
okay. Yep. So what I'm going to talk about today, though, there's going to be one major change today, and that's that we might end up with some numbers in front of the x squared. This is always going to be a perfect square, okay, right? That's where we got the x times x. And then this is also always going to be a perfect square. That's the 5 times 5. Now, if these match, if they are identical, okay, you guys notice we've got the same thing just repeated. So if this is multiplied by itself, we're going to do one more thing that we haven't done before, and that's we're going to take this and we're going to write it as x plus 5 squared. Right. It'd be like 3 times 3. Something times itself is the same as that to the second power. Right? We're just simplifying it a little bit more. Everybody okay with that? All right. Okay. Has everybody got it written down? Okay, so what I want to look at here, notice that this is a perfect square. Okay. 4 is a perfect square, right? Okay, and so is n squared, either something times itself. And then this is also a perfect square. Okay, that's a good indication. So go ahead and put your two sets of parentheses. Okay. Now the first thing in each parentheses, it's not just going to be n and n. It has to multiply to be 4n squared.
And the second.
The variable is still going to be n times n. That's where we're going to get our n squared. But to get the 4, I have to have 2n and 2n. Is everybody all right with that? If I multiply those, I'll get 4n squared. Okay. And then how do I get the 1? Okay.
0.
The only no, we're not adding, we're multiplying. The only factors of 1 is 1 and itself, 1 and 1. Okay? If I'm going to add, if this middle term is negative, they are both going to have to be negative 1. Okay? So let's look at that for a second. Okay? Now, I want to go over something here because this is going to be a little bit different. If there is no number here, so most of the trinomials that we've done have just been like n squared, right? And we had to multiply to this number, add to be this number. If there is a number in front, these are not going to add to be that middle term, okay? That's not going to work. Because if you think about foiling, you remember the first, outer, inner, last? Okay. The first is our 4n squared. The outer when I take this times this is negative 2n. Then the inner is also negative 2n, and when I combine those, that's where the negative 4 comes in. So it's not just these two numbers added together anymore because I have this multiplying the outer and the inner. Okay, but since these are going to be perfect squares, it's pretty easy to figure out what these numbers are just by that last number. Okay. All right, so is this a perfect square? Something times itself?
No. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
So all we need to do is that last step,
Box it or something.
combine it into one parenthesis squared.
Oh.
Okay, let's move on here. So
Who's running this one?
start with your two sets of parentheses.
Wouldn't it be 8x?
It's not going to be 8 because we're not
Four.
adding, we're multiplying. So it's got to be 4x and 4x. Is everybody okay with that? All right. And then if I look at the last, so this is another perfect square. So to multiply to be, what's the square root of 25?
5.
5 and 5. Now just check if it has to be positive or negative. Okay.
Positive.
So it has to be positive. And then what I want you guys to just check just to verify that this works, because if this middle term is not exactly the right thing, it may not work. So to check, what is my outer product here?
20.
Okay, and my inner product?
20.
Will that add together to be that? That's what you guys need to check to make sure it works. If that does not work, then it's not a perfect square trinomial, and it's just going to be prime. It will not work. Okay. If these are the exact same, how do we write our final answer?
4x plus 5 squared.
Yep, simplify it. 4x plus 5 squared.
Pretty good.
Okay, I do want to talk about this one a little bit. I'll go ahead and give you a forewarning. This is not a perfect square trinomial. There's going to be like one or two on your worksheet maybe that aren't going to work like those other ones. So this one, you're just going to factor like normal. So set up your parentheses. What has to go in the first?
X.
Just x and x. That's where we get the x squared from. And then I need two things that multiply to be 30. And if there's no number in front, they are going to add to be 13.
3 and 10.
Okay, plus 3, plus 10.
Oh.
Now, if those are not the same, then we can't simplify it as being squared. So you're just going to circle that. Okay.
Good. Rudy.
All right, I'm going to give you guys one more to do on your own. And I will check this one and then give you your homework. Make sure it's one I haven't given you already.
I still want that math competition between you and the teacher next door. Yeah.
And
Still recording. Leave that in the video, Mr. Don.